Hi guys, Peter, and guess what? Yes, we know it's just 2 days to go now, 48 hours before we launch globally the Inside Track. And I'm just so excited to take you guys on the journey. But here's a quick reminder before we get into today's lesson as to exactly what's going to happen on Wednesday. We are going to be posting the links on where to buy the Inside Track on Amazon in the morning, and there's going to be two different times. There's going to be morning for Europe and there's going to be morning for North America, because that's a .co.uk and a .com link. Now here's what's going to happen. The first link that we send out, please go grab the book, because it will be the cheapest that we found from all of the resellers. What will likely happen is that will sell out quite quickly, in which case we will then promote the next link, which will be slightly more expensive, but still you'll be able to get it. So if you want to get the book, the short thing is on Wednesday, as soon as you see us post the link, go grab it. The faster you grab it, the cheaper it's going to be. Now once you grab the book, please then email your receipt from Amazon or proof of purchase to happytohelp@petersage.com. Again, we'll put all of this in the post. And we will send you back the free gifts and bonuses, including the ebook and the audiobook. Now, the audiobook won't be released for about another week, and the ebook won't officially be released by another week, but we will send you that sooner than the release date, and the ebook almost on the same day, because that's ready now to go. So that's really what's going to happen. If you tune in tomorrow, you'll also find out what the other bonuses are that we're going to be stacking with that. And trust me, you're going to want to know, because it's exciting. So that's where we're at now. Today, we're going to do a quick overview on the penultimate chapter, which is the 10th letter that I wrote, chapter 10. And there's something that I explain in there, which I think you'll find useful today. And that is a subject that a lot of people get confused about, or don't have a framework for understanding. And that is the difference between coincidence and synchronicity. Coincidence is where something happens from the mindset of it being random. Now, this is a standard default for people that are materialist based, that come from a sort of, life just happens to be a random mutation. Evolution is a random mutation of genetic experiment that just kind of picks and chooses based upon certain laws of nature that we don't understand. But that's the physical world. If you understand the metaphysical world, then that's when you start to understand synchronicity. So if something happens once, then it's an incident. If it happens twice, we call it a coincidence. But if it happens on multiple times, then there is an underlying pattern that is usually driving it. Nature doesn't do things randomly on a consistent basis. There is an order to it. We call that chaos theory, if you've ever looked into that. But when you start to get a model for understanding, it tends to make sense. And I'll explain it. And I'm going to explain it using the flip chart, and I'm going to explain it doing this way. I want you to use the ocean here as a metaphor. Now, if we take the ocean has various levels of depth. So let's just say, we've got kind of surface here from 0 to 50 meters. Yeah. And we've got, we go down to, down here, 50 to 100 meters. Yeah. 100 to 150 meters, and then down here, so like 150, say, to much deeper. Let's say to 500 meters, whatever it may be. Deep ocean. Now, each one of these depths or levels will have its own ecosystem. What do I mean by that? Well, if you take the coral feeders, and the coral ecosystem, that operates at the top. That's up here. And it has its own types of fish, which have their own adaptations to sunlight and pressure, which are adapted for shallower waters. They have their own predators. They have their own ecosystem where they bump into certain things that are also swimming at this level. Now we understand that. But if you go deeper, let's say take the bottom feeders, for example. The bottom feeders down here have different adaptations to pressure and sunlight. They have different food, different predators. They're going to bump into different types of environment and fish and friends and all of that kind of stuff. The top feeders here never meet the bottom feeders. Why? Because it's different ecosystem. They're at different levels. The bottom feeders never meet the top feeders. They're not designed for it. And you have different ecosystems at different depths. But it's all the same ocean. Would you not agree? All of this is the same ocean, but we have different ecosystems based upon different depths. Well, because we're humans and we live on the surface of the Earth, we get confused. We can't apply this model to ourselves on a two-dimensional depth model because it doesn't relate. We get sucker punched into thinking that we all live at the same level. surface of the Earth. However, I'm here to suggest that we don't. We all live at different levels energetically. This same ecosystem differentiation is actually going on 24/7 in our lives individually all of the time, but we miss it because we get confused because it's not a two-dimensional depth model. Levels of consciousness is what I'm talking about. So for example, if you are, let's pick here, no correlation to these, but let's just pick here the 4 levels of consciousness that I tend to teach and what became a little famous in my London Real interview. For those of you that have seen that, it's where I kind of introduced the model to the world and it became pretty viral. But we went through the model of to me down here, which is victim mode, to me. Then we go into by me, which is achiever mode. We get into through me, which is where you're in flow and most synchronicities happen. And then we get into the high levels of oneness as me, where the spiritual kind of masters teach. Now, let me ask you a question. We all operate at certain levels of consciousness. If you're operating in to me mode and you're swimming, you're going to actually be operating in a certain ecosystem, which means you're going to be attracting certain types of friends, people, predators, opportunities, events, circumstances that are correlated to this particular ecosystem. If you're in through me, you're going to be attracting different people. You're going to be resonating with different friends. You're going to have different business opportunities present themselves, or opportunities at work, or etc., or lessons for you to grow. The lessons, the higher the consciousness, tend to be less painful, by the way, as opposed to the lessons at the lower level of consciousness. Because when we're in down here, which is usually more egocentric, we tend to need a bit of a slap to get our attention. So levels down here, the game tends to be a little tougher than it is up here. But it's all the same environment. We call it all the same ocean. So if you've ever been on holiday and you just happen to bump into another couple and you get on really, really great, it's like, wow, these are my kind of people, we just get on great, and you stay in touch. That's about as surprising as a clownfish bumping into a sea anemone. Right? They're in the same ecosystem. It's a natural mix. They're going to be swimming around, they're going to happen to meet the sea anemone because that's part of how that ecosystem is designed. So my question is, now what level are you swimming at? You're swimming at a level that is consummate to your current experience, your current level of consciousness. If you are in victim mode, are you likely to have opportunities present themselves for prosperity? Are you likely to have opportunities present themselves to meet the person of your dreams? No. You have to change your energetic depth and raise yourself to a different buoyancy of consciousness in order to experience that ecosystem. And a lot of people don't get that. Your life right now, my life right now, is a perfect level of attraction for the people, opportunities, and lessons that we need that are consummate with the level of consciousness we're at. And our reaction will be accordingly. Now the challenge is if you go to somewhere like a 9-to-5 job, then you are going to be punched. All of these different fishes are put and punched together in the same fish tank, which is why at work, in that scenario, some people you repel, you don't like, some people you're attracted to, some people you're just going to get talking to. Now when I was in prison, it was so evident to see this. There were certain people in that environment that were higher levels of consciousness than lower. They would just happen to find me. We just happen to bump into each other against all of the odds. Because sea anemone, clownfish, same deal. So you're talking lobster and sea cucumber on the bottom of the ocean. Same deal. Anglerfish, shrimp, same deal. There's a match there. So if you are mindful of the fact that this goes on energetically 24/7, we can start to ask ourselves, where am I swimming? And then start to look at things that are it's not a coincidence, it happens to be a perfect synchronistic match when stuff in our outer world shows up pertinent to where we are, what we're focusing on, and what level of our consciousness is. Anyway, I want to share that with you. I'll go into a little bit more detail, some great examples in the book on Chapter 10. In Chapter 10, I also talk about some of the ways I'm trying to help people that have come to a place of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is where you have stopped trying. You've given up. It's the level of apathy. very close to suicide, although suicide tends to require more energy in order to basically have the courage to kill yourself. Whereas apathy, people can die through passive or passivity, so they stop eating or what have you. Whereas if you can reframe somebody, and I go into detail on a particular gentleman who was in his early 40s but had served over half of his life in prison for murder for a stupid act that happened when he was in his early 20s. And he was struggling to be able to come to terms with being able to get out. He'd gone through 20 plus years of incarceration and had a very institutionalized, very interesting mindset. How do you give somebody like that hope? How do you give them vision? How do you give them purpose? How do you be able to allow them, when they finally come out, to use that experience to empower them and others rather than disempower them and walk around with a stigma for the rest of their life? Now, nothing's ever going to bring back the person that they took out of the game. Nothing's ever going to make that right. It isn't right. But if we spend £1 million or so on taxpayers' money to incarcerate this person, how do you get a return on investment on that actually adds to the greater good to be able to help prevent more murders than just have somebody else show up as a drain on society, or the typical Brooks was here kind of mentality out of Shawshank Redemption, as many of you I'm sure can relate in that as an example. How do you do that? So I go into detail there. Now, again, these are examples I use on extreme circumstances. When you read these examples, I'm putting them in there so that you can see how to use them in your life, where hopefully the examples aren't as extreme, and it allows you to break down the belief system that if it can work for that, then it can work for me. If you can climb a mountain, you can climb a molehill. It's an easier contrast frame. And I cover a few other things in chapter 10 as well, including what I call Operation Starlight, which was a secret initiative that I used to affect 60 to 75% of the entire prison. And I got a huge letter of commendation from one of the senior officers for that was kind of blown away. Anyway, it's all in the book. So guys, that's it. That's for today. I just wanted to share that with you. Hopefully that model allows you to put a framework around understanding the things that are difference between random events showing up in your life and a little higher level of causality from an energetic perspective, rather than just the Newtonian sort of pinball, this causes that. Please keep the questions coming. Please keep the comments coming. I'm all excited. Please, bring your friends into this as well, because again, with you and I'm hoping we can get this book into as many hands as possible to help other people shift their perspective on life, get over their adversity, and start to make the world a little better place. I will see you tomorrow for the final day of the countdown, where we go into chapter 11 and some of the lessons that I learnt introspectively over the entire 6-month journey that I had. All right, guys, I love you, and I will see you tomorrow.